What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today I'm ranking all 32 defenses in the NFL. I'm excited to do this, and it's going to be a contentious one, so I'm looking forward to hearing from y'all as well. But before I get into my routine and my spiel, I do want to do some house cleaning. First off, the giveaway winner has been selected, they've been notified, and they will be getting their gift card very soon. So congratulations to our giveaway winner for us reaching 100 subs. And I know it's probably bumming out a bunch of people who didn't win, but good news is I said I'm going to do this at every 100 subs we hit until we hit 1,000, and we're already at almost 150. So help us keep growing the channel. We'll be at 200 before you know it, and you'll have another opportunity to win a $25 gift card of your choice. And next thing I want to mention, if you have any video ideas, things you want to see me talk about, obviously I'm working through the season previews, and that's fun to talk about each and every team in a more micro level. But if you have anything you want me to talk about, video ideas, comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts about things you would want to see. But without further ado, hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, please hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel with more sports content, please consider subscribing. In addition to those video ideas, comment your rankings of each and every defense in the NFL. Who do you think's the best? I think I might surprise people with who I have at number 1. But also, who's your favorite team? Where would you put them in the NFL mix of defenses? Let's jump into it, starting with the Houston Texans. And also, just because the Texans come in last, and this applies to basically everyone on your screen right now, that's not to say this team is, devoid of talent and there's no good players. Like Bradley Roby has really stepped up and improved year by year, and I really liked his game. Honestly, he's really become a solid cornerback. Also, Justin Reed, I think, is a really solid option as well. So there are players, it's just overall not enough, right? Like, this is going to be a defense that's near the bottom in points allowed, yardage allowed. They lack pass rush. Outside of Roby, I have some questions at cornerback. Desmond King's pretty solid in the slot, but even he, has his ups and downs. Looked really good with the Chargers, tapered off a little bit with the Titans. I think he was okay, but, wasn't to the same level that he was playing with in San Diego with the Chargers. So, a lot of question marks across that defense, but, that's what you would expect from a team in the rebuild. Number 31, the Atlanta Falcons. And again, a team with pieces, right? Deion Jones, really like that. And Richie Grant, I was a big fan of his. AJ Terrell, I think, really improved a lot from start to end last year. But again, there's just not enough. And specifically in the area of pass rush. And I'll get this out of the way. I am a firm believer in pass rush, and maybe that's why who I have at number 1 is my number 1 defense, because I think that's where you can make the biggest impact and change the game the most on the defensive side of the football. I know, like, PFF and others have really moved towards the notion of winning on the outside, winning on the perimeter, winning with corners, and, obviously good cornerback play goes a long way. But to me, if you're going to be elite in one area in football, to me, it's got to be on the front line, getting pass rush. That's how you can change the game the most. And overall, Atlanta just lacks in that area. I didn't mention Grady Jarrett a minute ago. He is probably their best defensive player, and he's a stud. He creates a lot of pressure, but he on the interior is just not enough. And he doesn't quite have that Aaron Donald effect where he just creates pass rush from guys who, in history haven't had it yet. He doesn't have that, Aaron Donald to Dante Fowler Jr. type of effect. Ironically enough, Dante Fowler Jr. played for the Falcons, but this is a team that really needs to improve on the front line. Seattle Seahawks coming in at number 30. And this is one that definitely can move up because Bobby Wagner's still probably the best inside linebacker in football. And in my lifetime, him and Luke Kuechly are the best I've seen do it. And Jamal Adams, I know he had some coverage concerns. He also played through a lot of injuries. 9.5 sacks is really productive. And if you find ways to make him a game changer, he has the talent to do whatever you need him to do. So I'm not as low on Adams as I feel like a lot of people are right now, though it was kind of a poor season in coverage. I worry about the pass rush away from Jamal Adams. I know Carlos Dunlap was really good last year. You brought him back, but Dunlap and his production is definitely the exception to the rule. I would not count on him being as good as he was when he first got to Seattle. And then, is it LJ Collier? Where is this pass rush coming from? You're going to need to get pressure against, Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, whoever wins in San Francisco, Matt Stafford out in LA, or, Kyler Murray in Arizona. Obviously, it's tough to get, downfield pressure, but that's a different talk for a different day. And then also, I'm worried about this cornerback group. I like Akello Witherspoon. He has had moments, and he's young, so a lot of that is good things that you want to hear about a cornerback. He feels like he still has some talent left to be, tapped into. But until we see it, he is a question mark. And then, Trey Flowers, had a pretty decent season a couple years ago, not so much last year. And is it, DJ Reed, another young guy? What are you getting in that? I don't know. I like Trey Brown out of Oklahoma. They took in the later rounds, but he's a nickel guy at best. So I don't know. A lot of question marks across that defense outside of, Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams. Also, Quandre Diggs is a really good free safety. Cincinnati Bengals at number 29. And again, it comes down to pass rush, though they have taken the necessary strides to get better. On that note, I do think Trey Hendricks is a downgrade from Carl Lawson. I also think he has a lower ceiling than Carl Lawson, but you had to, find someone to fill that void, and Hendricks was one of the better options available, so not too far. You're not plummeting from, the mountaintops. And they draft Cameron Sample, and I'm interested to see how they use Joseph Osai. At 4-3, I'm thinking more as a, blitzing outside linebacker, but maybe they're putting his hand in the dirt and they're going to use him in a DN spot, and that would be intriguing. I'd love to see how his body frame fits into that role, but nonetheless, they tried to address the defensive end position and create pass rush, and Cam Sample in specific is someone I thought was a pretty good value for where they got him. A lot of questions at the linebacker position too. Logan Wilson, haven't totally seen it all from him. And then the secondary, again, has its concerns. Jesse Bates is a stud. Von Bell, also a very good safety. That's kind of where I felt like it was necessary to put the Seahawks and Bengals together, where it's like, you don't worry about the safeties, but just about everything else is kind of a wee-woo, if you will. But on the outside, I think Trey Waynes is getting better, but did that injury last year, him missing the entire season, did that derail his improvement? And a lot of times the answer ends up being yes for football and basketball players in specific that come to mind. But maybe that's not the case. And maybe Trey Waynes continues to improve. Or if he's just getting back to where he was at the end of his tenure in Minnesota, that's a good cornerback on the outside. Mike Hilton is fantastic in the slot. But then, again, who opposite of Trey Waynes is getting a lot of snaps? That's kind of a concern I have for Cincinnati. On to the Dallas Cowboys at 28. I do think this defense will be slightly better. But I'm not sold on Randy Gregory, and really he's the X factor. When I get to the Cowboys, season preview, he will 100% be one of my X factors. Because if Randy Gregory steps up and he's a legit presence on the other end position opposite of DeMarcus Lawrence, it makes DeMarcus Lawrence better. And if those two guys are better, it helps improve the pass rush from the interior with Neville Gallimore or whoever steps into that role. So Gregory has a huge role, and maybe more so than it may look like, considering he's not the defensive end we talk about with Dallas. It's DeMarcus Lawrence. The linebacking core, it's really interesting. The linebacking position is not one I would say you need to be 5 deep at with really solid options, but they like Keanu Neal, liked the value for Jabril Cox. After not getting any of their corners, I think they got Micah Parsons at a fantastic spot. Maybe he is somebody who puts his hand in the dirt ultimately and helps in passing situations. I think he could have been one of the best edge rushers, maybe the best edge rusher in this class if that was all he did. But those guys on top of Leighton Vander Esch, Jalen Smith, who you're already paying a lot of money to, or they just decline the 5th-year option to LVE, you're paying Smith a lot of money. They have a lot of question marks there, and that's a position that's already really tough to play, and because of that, I'm not entirely sure you prioritize it with a lot of assets in the way of free agency spending and high draft capitals. So I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on how I should feel about that. I do like a lot of those players, though. Jalen Smith, my boy from Notre Dame. Micah Parsons, great value. Jabril Cox, fantastic value. LVE is talented. He just needs to be out on the field. And Keanu Neal at linebacker, I think ultimately could work. It's just how does it all come together under Dan Quinn? So time will tell the story there. And then on the outside, I've said this 1,000 times, I think Trevon Diggs would be a really nice high-end cornerback too. This is a team I am begging and pleading to sign Richard Sherman. If Sherman's willing to take a 1-year deal, he could be the guy matched up with the number ones, or takes out that right side of the field and that Dan Quinn cover 3 system, and you put Diggs on their side, and his assignment gets easier, so therefore he looks better. And then you have Jordan Lewis in the nickel. I think all that shapes up a lot better. Donovan Wilson was a nice find at safety. We'll see if DeMonte Casey can stay healthy, but again, a lot of question marks for this Dallas team. Detroit Lions coming at number 27. Like Romeo Okwara, I think Julian Okwara carves out a bigger role. Trey Flowers really could step up and get back to where he was prior to signing in Detroit. Matt Patricia was just not the guy for a lot of those players who ended up in Detroit. I think of Gerard Davis, who was a first-round pick, been a bust so far. Trey Flowers, big money addition, didn't work out. Maybe now, new coaching staff and new scheme, maybe that helps out Trey Flowers. I think he still has some talent, so look for a bounce back here in his area. The linebacking core is pretty desolate. Jelani Tavai is an athlete, and that's a about all we could say about him at this point. And if you've been around the channel, you know I love Aaron Glenn. I think that's one of the best hires there were for any new coaching staff. I think he's going to be a phenomenal defensive coordinator in a year, maybe two. We'll be talking about him potentially being a head coach, getting a lot of buzz, getting some interviews and whatnot. Did a great job in New Orleans as the DB's coach, and I think he is the perfect hire to try to improve upon the game of Amani Uruguaye, get Jeff Okudah to be who we thought he was, and then also help out, Tracy Walker and Will Harris, who are two guys who I think have a lot of talent. I think this team is on the right direction. They're just not there yet, so that's why they come in at 27. The Las Vegas Raiders at 26, and this is, if anybody on the screen who could pole vault up, I think the Raiders honestly really could be. I like the signing of Casey Hayward, obviously a scheme fit for DC Gus Bradley, and Javon Mullen could be in for a bounce back year. I really don't get why everyone's writing him off. I think he really fits that cover 3 and what Gus Bradley wants to do really well. Javon Merrick, I hope they're not using him as just that, deep blue center field free safety. Hopefully he's in the box, strong safety, maybe he lines up in the nickel. I want to see him play a lot of different roles, but let's just say in a cover 3 you have Hayward, Mullen, and then Javon Merrick is your deep guy. You got a lot to like there, and then you allow Jonathan Abram to be in and around the line of scrimmage, Divine Diablo as well, who I like in that sub linebacker type of role, and they spent a ton of money in free agency trying to find pass rush. And Yannick Ngakoue was one of my favorite contracts from free agency. Go back and find that video on my channel. Solomon Thomas, reasonable deal. They bring back Jonathan Hankins. They're putting pieces in place. Additionally, Max Crosby is pretty good, and Clelin Ferrell is improving. I don't know if he'll ever be worthy of a top 4 pick because he's not better than Brian Burns and some of the guys taken after Clelin Ferrell, but he has improved as a run defender, and the pass rush is steadily improving, but he's definitely a better run defender than pass rusher. But pieces are in place for this team to get a lot better, in my opinion. The Jacksonville Jaguars are in at 25, and honestly, I said the Raiders could pole vault, but the Jags really could too, because they spent a lot of money at cornerback with Shaquille Griffin, and they draft Tyson Campbell, who kind of sounds like in an interview I was listening to, Campbell might be moving into the nickel, which is interesting, is that big body frame, not exactly who you think about, but in a man-heavy defense at Georgia, he's a great athlete. I could see that really translating well. And then C.J. Henderson, fantastic cornerback, young stud in the making. Worry about the safety position. Is it Rayshon Jenkins? Is it Andre Cisco? Is it both of them? They're kind of both free safeties. Cisco's a great ball hawk, but then what kind of headaches does he cause you with missed tackles, bad angles, et cetera, et cetera? And Rayshon Jenkins is, ironically enough, he's Jag. He's just a guy. And then you look at the pass rush. I love the potential for in a 3-4 defensive front, specific. Caleb Von Chason, Josh Allen, opposite of one another, getting the job done. I am really intrigued by how that could play out this year. Ultimately, once you get in the nickel sets, those two guys are going to have to put their hands in the dirt. Allen's proven to be able to do that at a high level. Chason, not so much yet, but in year 2, I think he's poised for a big year. And then Taven Bryan, kind of a question mark there on the interior. Tyson Alualu originally signs, then leaves, so kind of a bummer there on the interior. But you do get Roy Robertson Harris, who is a solid add. Miles Jack, good linebacker. There's pieces in place, and then ultimately it comes down to Allen and Chason. Can those guys get enough pressure? And if they do, they'll start skyrocketing up from 25. On to team number 24, the Carolina Panthers. Again, another young team with a lot of talent in place. Derek Brown, I think, is only going to keep getting better. Jeremy Chinn's a fun story. Kind of just a better Jonathan Abram in a lot of ways. A guy who can live around the line of scrimmage, though. He said they want to start playing him more as a deep safety. Intrigued by how that might turn out. They draft J.C. Horn. That allows you to move Dante Jackson to a role where he's kind of the speed specialist or just the CB2 in general. Like that, Troy Pride can play. He can also play some press man, but maybe you play Troy Pride Jr. in the nickel. That sounds all well and good. They signed Hassan Reddick, and then I think Brian Burns, for those who like to put money down, I don't necessarily know the odds off the top of my head, but Khalil Mack's 20-1 to win Defensive Player of the Year, and Brian Burns has longer odds than that. And Brian Burns is a guy who could easily rack up 15, 16, 17, 18 sacks, lead the league, and come away with that award. So if you're looking for a long shot bet, Defensive Player of the Year, I am really intrigued by Brian Burns, and I'm just an overall big fan of his game. Not going to do much in the run game, but man, when it comes to getting the passer, there are a few who really do it better than Brian Burns. Adding Hassan Reddick will only help as well. Year 2 of Yetur Gross-Matos, I think a guy who can play inside and out across the defensive line. Jack Thompson, solid linebacker. They need some help elsewhere. But again, kind of similar for where the Jags are, where there's some pieces in place, or maybe more so the Lions, where there's some young pieces that are starting to come together. They just need to gel as a unit, and then you'll start seeing this team make their way up the rankings. The Jets are at 23. And really, this comes down to I am a huge fan of Quinnen Williams. I think C.J. Mosley has a bounce-back year. I think he will be leaned on heavily by Robert Saleh, and the defense he's trying to run, even Jarrad Davis has a good bounce-back season. But this team needs to get better on the edge. They do bring Carl Lawson, who has a pretty good upside. He's still improving as a defensive end. So like the potential they have there. And then the cornerback group, I think Bryce Hall is a really fantastic scheme fit. But then outside of that, a lot of question marks in the CB core. Marcus May, Ashton Davis, fantastic safety. So retrospect, maybe I have the Jets a little too high, but I do love Williams. I think Mosley has a bounce back year. Marcus May is a fantastic player. Ashton Davis is a ball hawk. They're, again, pieces in place. Kansas City Chiefs, and we'll talk about the Buffalo Bills, 22 and 21 respectively. These are two teams who don't need their defense to be all that good. And right now, they have found that happy medium between spending enough money on defense and having it being a good enough core, while you know what that team's about. Those two teams want to put up points, and that's why I hope they play each other in the AFC Championship game. Don't know if it will happen, but it'll be a shootout if it does. Additionally, they're both teams headlined by a few stars. For the Chiefs, Chris Jones immediately comes to mind. L'Jarius Sneed was a nice add last year, too. He's a guy who could definitely be a star in the making. Tyrann Mathieu is one of the best safeties in football. And for Buffalo, Tre'Davious White is one of the best cornerbacks doing it right now. Matt Milano, Tremaine Edmonds, really nice linebacker duo. I know Edmonds hasn't taken that step forward, but I comp him to, kind of fitting because of the NBA Finals, but guys in the NBA get drafted at 18, a la Devin Booker, who, you'll see flashes from him, but then people start to complain. And Booker may not be the best example of this, but you'll start to see NBA fans get on players who are, in year 2 or 3 and not hitting their stride. But when you're drafted at 18, it may take more than 2 or 3 years. And especially now with Booker, now he's playing in the NBA Finals, and it looks like, the closest thing to Kobe since Kobe. And for Edmonds, he was drafted at 19. Literally, not even 20 years old when he was drafted. So it may take till year 4 and 5 for him to put it all together. He has a little bit bigger of a learning curve, in my opinion. So I think this really could be a year where he breaks out and, is a contender for Defensive Player of the Year type of season. So I think highly of him. I think he's fantastic. Matt Milano serves his purpose next to him. He's a solid addition, or really re-signing for Buffalo. Both teams, though, still trying to find complements to those stars, right? For Buffalo, they're trying to find that corner opposite of Tre'Davious White. I think Levi Wallace can get there, though. His best season was his rookie year, and since then hasn't been as good, so I understand why Bills fans feel the need to find an improvement at that position. And for the Chiefs, mainly it's additional pass rush. Is Frank Clark going to be healthy? Because when he is, he's still a productive pass rusher, and still a really good one, honestly, but he makes a ton of money. He's almost never healthy. So a lot of Chiefs fans are ready to see him get the scissors, get cut, and I totally understand why. But, where's that other pass rush around Chris Jones coming? But nonetheless, these two teams have a good enough defense, headlined by playmaking stars, but you know what these teams are about. They're about putting points on the board with their offense. Philadelphia Eagles at 20. I feel like this is kind of a hot take because they have an insane front four still, but they're all old. Like, how much longer is Brandon Graham going to be able to do this? I think he could be good for 10 sacks this year, but this has got to be one of the last seasons he does that, right? And Fletcher Cox is still one of the best D tackles, but he's not the best D tackle like he might have been a couple years ago. And on that note, a Cox fall-off might be, impending very soon. And I'm not entirely sure this team has, pieces in place to fill the void if those two guys take a step back, though. I do like the Eagles draft. They did find some guys on the interior defensive line, so maybe more of a Fletcher Cox replacement down the line, but I don't know. I'm not entirely sold on that. The linebacking core, I'll say it, not good. Cornerback core, outside of Darius Slay, I don't like it. And then they signed Anthony Harris, who 2 years ago, best playmaking free safety in football, last year missed a lot of potential plays, took some bad angles, and just overall didn't look all that good. He's fine, but looked like a guy who would sign for $5 million in free agency. So which Anthony Harris are you getting, and then who's starting next to him? I don't know. So I get this team has an insane pass rush, and I'm a pass rush guy, so I should be higher on this team, but they're old guys. I don't know how much longer I can depend on them, so the Eagles come in at number 20. The LA Chargers at 19. This could be another one that rises up the board because I love the addition of Sante Samuel. Perfect scheme fit, and then additionally, you hire Brandon Staley, right? Like, that's got to count for something. Bringing in a guy who was the defensive coordinator for the best defense in football last year. And again, you draft Asante Samuel. He's a perfect scheme fit. So you have him, Michael Davis. You have Chris Harris, who's going to play in the nickel, and he's one of the best nickel corners in football, I think this new scheme is great for Kenneth Murray, who had moments, but I mean, I think most people would consider his rookie season a little bit of a disappointment. But I think especially using him as a blitzer this season, that's going to be really, really effective use of his skill set. I do worry about the edge positions of Uchenna Nwosu. He's okay, like he can be a starting edge, but if he is, you really like to have someone better on the opposite side, and as of right now, it's in kind of an open position who might be starting opposite of Uchenna Nwosu. But they also have a game breaker in Joey Bosa, who, when healthy, is one of the best pure pass rushers in the game right now. Like, that man is insane. They're going to play him at 3-4 D end, so moving him away from that 4-3 end spot and 3-4, you make it even more favorable matchups against guards, which is really scary because that dude doesn't need any help. But if he gets favorable matchups, watch out. And this has got to be the year Jerry Tillery takes a step forward. Obviously, I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I have seen him at big games, but that small frame has held him back, and he's just doesn't seem like he's strong enough to this point. But obviously things can change over time. Tennessee Titans at number 18 just did their season preview, and really like the signing of Bud Dupree. Perfect scheme fit. Him and Harold Landry on paper, really nice pass rush duo, and they complement each other really, really well. I hope Tennessee limits the amount of times they want to drop those guys back in coverage, and part of that's Dean Pease right now. He's going to Atlanta, and he's a guy who wants to just give a bunch of wacky looks to offenses. So I'm thinking now they depart from that, and they're going to have Landry and Dupree. They're going to drop back in coverage, obviously, but their main focus is going to be going out and getting the QB. And if it is, fantastic. Nico Autry, really like that signing as well. So for a team that off of play action against the Titans defense last year, passer rating was like above 130, some gaudy number. Basically every QB off of play action against Tennessee became Patrick Mahomes. They addressed the pass rush, which had to improve. And Jeffrey Simmons is a really good young stud in the making. And I think he takes another leap forward. He's kind of that Quinnen Williams category for me. Good as is, but I think they can take another leap forward this upcoming season. If Caleb Farley can stay healthy, he has CB1 written all over him, even in a rookie year, which I don't think corners normally make a big impact as a rookie, but Caleb Farley, if anybody's going to do it, it's him or Patrick Surtain, which sounds like a layup. Top two corners, if we're taking out top two corners in the draft, but hear me out. Caleb Farley has the size, the speed, and he's also somebody who's still learning the position. Quarterback turned wide receiver turned corner. That curve is just through the roof. And again, the size, the frame, the speed, the build, the tape, he does it all. So if he's your number one guy, or even if he's not, if Janoris Jenkins is your number one, favorable matchup then goes to Farley. I think there's pieces in place. I'd like to see how they're going to use Christian Fulton, who I liked, and they got a good value on. Elijah Molden, also fantastic value. A guy who can be a strong safety in the box, also be a nickel corner. Amani Hooker looks like he's going to take over as a strong safety, though, so might be piecing together reps for Molden. But altogether, a lot of things that could piece this Titans defense from one of the worst last year to definitely top half of the league. Right now, I have them at 18, though. The Arizona Cardinals come in at 17. Star power is all I can think about when I think about the Cardinals defense. J.J. Watt signs a contract there. I think they're going to try to re-sign Chandler Jones. As of right now, no long-term deal or extension in place, but Chandler Jones, one of the best pass rushers of the last half decade to a decade. Zaven Collins, first-round pick. Last year's first-round pick, Isaiah Simmons. Those are your inside linebackers. That's really interesting. Budda Baker, the guy on your screen, unbelievable. Like, this guy, if they could not have found a better replacement to Tyrann Mathieu, I'm not saying Budda Baker is as good as Tyrann Mathieu right now, but I mean, they play so similar. And also small guy, it just feels like a seamless transition in a lot of ways for Arizona. My concern comes on the outside, right? You bring Malcolm Butler, and that's great, but it'd been really good if Malcolm Butler could be your CB2. And if this team goes out and makes a trade for Stephon Gilmore, they're probably top 12. Like, they probably move up 5 spots. I know Gilmore's had his injuries, but then you make Butler CB2, and it really just improves how you look at that secondary. Byron Murphy, great slot corner, though, so they're just kind of looking for answers on the outside, and maybe my guy Tay Gowan shows out in training camp and tells the team, gives them everything they need to see that they don't need to go out there and trade for a corner. Maybe Tay Gowan could be one of those rare rookies who makes a big impact. I'm rooting for him, obviously, but bias aside, I have the Cardinals at 17. On to the top half of the league now. Minnesota Vikings are at 16. I really like the signing of Pat Pete. I think he fits that cover too well, and we saw it kind of revitalize the career of Xavier Rhodes, who ironically left Minnesota, but sometimes new place, it kind of works out for you. But I think for Pat Pete, it puts him in a role to play close to the line of scrimmage and just be a playmaker, as opposed to, hey, man on man, your responsibility is the guy lined up across from you. And Pat Pete once was the best, most athletic cornerback in football, or at least one of them, best star-studded athlete at corner. And he's just not that anymore. He's still a good athlete. He can play at the NFL level, but he just doesn't have that same speed element to him to continue to play man press. So I think that's why he was a little underwhelming last year in Arizona. Now he gets to be a playmaker in a defense that I think really will cater to that. I think Brashad Breeland is a fine starting NFL corner. I think he's solid. Cam Dantzler's in that building. They bring back Mackenzie Alexander, like that signing. I think Zimmer is really beefing up that secondary because he knows it was not in good shape heading into this offseason. Harrison Smith, still one of the better safeties in football. Maybe not the best anymore or top 3 anymore, but he's still in and around the conversation for top 5, top 7. And Xavier Woods is, fine, league average free safety. When you have someone as good as Smith, Woods will get the job done. If Anthony Barr is healthy, one of the best linebacker tandems in him and Eric Kendricks. Love that. And then the pass rush is going to be better this year, guys. One, you have Danielle Hunter coming back. Keep in mind, Yannick Ngakoue played 5 games for Minnesota last year and led the team in sacks with 5. That's embarrassing. This year, you get Danielle Hunter back, and he alone just takes it through the roof. That's a huge signing. They also bring in Sheldon Richardson, who I thought was going to go back to Cleveland after he was a free agent for a long time, but there you go. There's your third down pass rushing specialist from the D tackle side, and they have an abundance of options on that other defensive end position. I've even heard rumbling, don't know if this is going to happen because it feels like Everson Griffin's kind of burned this bridge, but I saw something the other day on Twitter and talking about Everson Griffin is open to a return with Minnesota, and hey, he'd be an improvement in my eyes to whoever might win that other defensive end battle in training camp. But even if they don't, they have a bunch of young guys. They drafted Norris Robinson, and that's kind of been the guy they've been drafting and pegging in the mid to late rounds, those long, lanky athletes. Hasn't really worked out yet other than Danielle Hunter, but maybe one of them hits. High conversion rate doesn't always need to apply when you get studs, right? They get Danielle Hunter and you kind of forget about the bums, to put it frank. And maybe one of those guys becomes the next star, or maybe they go sign a veteran. There's a couple still out there, but overall, Hunter's back, like the linebackers if they're healthy, and then they beefed up the secondary where you need a lot of guys to be able to take the field and give you meaningful snaps. So I like Minnesota a lot more than I liked them last year on the defensive side. New Orleans Saints at 15. I feel like this is going to be low compared to most, but haven't heard a whole lot about the off-the-field issues with Marshawn Lattimore, so he's probably going to be playing, but the guy opposite to him, I'm questioning who it's going to be, right? Like, is it going to be Paulson Adebo? I wouldn't hate it because he's a good playmaking corner. But again, rookie corners are subject to be picked on. So, I don't know. And their veteran options aren't necessarily great. Glad they got Marcus Williams back. Hopefully they can extend him. He's been a really nice story. I know he was the guy who gave up the Minnesota Miracle, but after that point, even before that point, really, it's just that one play that stands out as a bad one. But he's been a really nice story there in New Orleans. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the trash-talking king of the NFL right now. Love him around the line of scrimmage. Love him as a nickel player, too. So I think he's carved out a nice role for him. And then you talk about the pass rush, right? You lose Trey Hendrickson, and I think that hurts a little bit. But they would not give him a big role, which is interesting. So we had 13 sacks last year, but they still didn't give him a whole lot of a role in snap share, which is just fascinating how they look at him. And I figured that's why they wouldn't bring him back. They didn't tag him, et cetera, et cetera. Cam Jordan, really solid, still playing at a high level, but kind of what I talked about with Philadelphia. How much longer can you expect that? Eventually, it's going to stop. And I think this year you could probably count on 10 sacks, but you might start seeing some signs of aging. And then Marcus Davenport, I will say I've been skeptical upon him, but the numbers have improved. And you look at the PFF pass rush grades, like he has gotten better, but this has got to be the year where he validates them moving up, giving up a future first-round pick to get Green Bay's pick and taking Davenport. Like, he has got to prove that he can be, a guy who plays almost as much as Cameron Jordan, maybe the same amount, and be as productive. Especially with Jordan getting older, they're going to need a long-term answer to be that defensive end, that guy who could be the lead edge rusher. So, a lot of question marks for this team. Also, Demario Davis is a good linebacker, but that linebacking core after it is just not good. Maybe Pete Warner comes in and he plays a big role, but I don't know. Linebacking is a tough position to play in the NFL, but I'm not in love with their options either. So the Saints come in at number 15, and then the Green Bay Packers at 14. This team's a solid, reliable number 2 corner away from being a top 10 defense in a lot of ways. Zadarius Smith, fantastic player on the edge. Rashawn Gary, I think he carves out a big role for him. The size and the snap percentage has gotten bigger and bigger year by year, and the production has followed with it, though it was a couple of big games last year that inflates the sack total. But I think from what I've seen with my own two eyes, he has gotten better. And he already has the size, the athleticism, so I like that tandem. And you also have Preston Smith, so I mean, he's under contract. You might as well try to use him. And though I know sacks don't tell the full story, every other year he seems to find a way to be pretty productive. And this upcoming season would be, the other year where he puts together, maybe a 10-sack season. So just something to keep your eye on. Also, great safety combo with Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage. Savage is specific, is young and continuing to improve. But the best player on that defense is Jair Alexander. And again, good safeties. Alexander's a top 2 or 3 corner in the NFL. And they just didn't have Kevin King on the other side. That secondary would be maybe the best in football. I mean, it's ridiculous. Kevin King is just not good. Maybe Josh Jackson in this new Joe Barry cover 4 zone heavy scheme. I think that fits his play style a little bit more. So maybe this is a year where he carves out a sizable role for him, and then the Packers get a stable number 2 corner. If so, that would obviously pay dividends. Also, Kenny Clark still getting the job done. They could use some help on the interior, though, but there's a lot of pieces to like for that Green Bay defense. Next up's the New England Patriots at 13. This is a combination of money spent in free agency, but also players coming back from opting out in 2020. Also, you have Bill Belichick as your defensive coordinator. That defense is going to be playing at a pretty high level. This obviously is subject to change based off Stephon Gilmore, but I like the secondary as constructed. I know they don't want to pay Gilmore. It's not the Belichick way, but he fits what they want to do ever since the early 2010s when they switched to being such a man-heavy team. Gilmore is perfect, and because he is locked down when he's healthy and he's playing at 100%, it allows J.C. Jackson to be that playmaking guy on the opposite side, and that is so fun. I really like the idea of Jalen Mills being this team's nickel corner, though I know, before Pats fans yell at me, Jonathan Jones is one of the best nickel corners in football, so I'm not saying Mills is going to unseat him from that spot, but I think that's where Mills' skill set honestly plays the best because he has time at safety and at corner. Maybe he does play on the outside. Maybe that's why they are exploring these Gilmore trade options, and maybe that's why they tendered J.C. Jackson, so, because they saw Mills as a guy who could fill the role at a decently high level. I don't know. I think he'd just be fine in the slot, though I know Jones is a fantastic player. The weak spot really is that linebacker, though. You get Donta Hightower back, who continues to just fight off age and be a very productive player. Maybe Anthony Jennings carves out a bigger role. Also, they have Juwan Bentley. They bring in Raekwon McMillan. Maybe those guys step up. Bentley probably more so than McMillan. McMillan's kind of been a disappointment to this point, but there are pieces in place for that linebacker core to at least be okay, maybe above average. And then they've put money into the pass rush. Don't know what they're going to do with Chase Winovich yet, but you bring back Kyle Van Noy, that works. They spend a ton of money on Matthew Judon, who I think is a fantastic scheme fit, and I think a guy who is getting better and better and will serve as a really good edge rusher. So him and Van Noy create a nice duo, and then also you sign Devon Godshaw, really talented guy, can be the nose tackle, do just kind of stuff the run. They also draft Christian Barmore and Ronnie Perkins, some young blood in the mix, so really like what that front is shaping up to be for New England, though there's no crazy household names in the group. The Baltimore Ravens at 12. This was one of the tougher teams to rank because secondary-wise, or specifically cornerback-wise, one of the best groups there is, right? Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters might be the best cornerback duo in the NFL. And they play off of each other so well. And Humphrey can play inside, he can play out. Peters knows how to make big plays. It's awesome if you're a Ravens fan. As a Steelers fan, not so much. Deshaun Elliott serves his purpose. Chuck Clark, same thing. They both fit the role of what they want in a safety, which that defensive scheme is just so different. Wink Martindale is the most unique defensive coordinator in football maybe right now. And I think Patrick Queen will take a step forward in year 2, which obviously would bode well for Baltimore. Just have a couple of questions really on the edge. If I knew they had go-to options and I knew these guys were going to be elite right away, they're a top 10 defense. But Odafe Owe, this guy who coming out of Penn State we saw as a great athlete, but not necessarily polished. I don't want to say he's unpolished because he had hurries, just no sacks, but he's not a finished product, and that's the nice way to put it. What is he like year 1? We don't know yet. And then Titus Bowser is okay. He's a solid league average player. And Pernell McPhee is, a guy you can have on the roster, but nothing spectacular. Calais Campbell still remains to be probably the best pass rusher on this team, but even his play is starting to decline. And, how much longer can he continue to be one of the best players on the interior in football? I don't know. I have my concerns about how much longer you can expect it. But despite me saying all that, and it feels like I'm kind of bashing the team I put at number 12 in my defensive rankings, there's still a lot of talent. And Wink Martindale, again, one of the best defensive minds in football and great corners. Despite Calais Campbell being old, he still gets the job done. Odafe Oweh, I think, will be productive. Tyus Bowser is solid. Malik Harrison, Patrick Queen, already talked about Queen. I think this team has good enough players in the front seven with a splash of fantastic on the outside. Safeties know how to do their job, and then Wink Martindale kind of pulls the strings, orchestrates it all together, and overall, I think it's one of the best defenses in football. Chicago Bears come in at number 11, a team that's starting to regress a little bit on that side, but Khalil Mack, with healthy, still one of the best pass rushing outside linebackers in football. And you have Robert Quinn on the other side, who I think they can definitely get better at, but on paper, he's a name you recognize. He's okay, but I do think they can improve there. Akeem Hicks, still one of the best run stoppers that the league has to offer. You also get Eddie Goldman back, though I did see he was holding out. Don't know if he's officially back yet, but if he is back, him and Bill Nichols create a really nice tandem as a nose tackle, D-tackle rotation, help stop the run, but also Nichols could potentially be an okay pass rusher, at least compared to Goldman. So again, pieces in place, specifically in the front seven. My concerns come in the secondary. How are they using Tashawn Gibson and Eddie Jackson? I think Jackson would be a fantastic, just playmaking free safety. Kind of similar to the thoughts of what the Goat House has said. And if you don't know who he is, definitely check him out on YouTube. He's a fantastic, super smart guy. But what are they going to do with Gibson? And then is it a split safety? Are they kind of splitting the tandem there? Or are they just going to let Eddie Jackson go out there and make big plays? Because that's what that dude can do. And then also you lose Kyle Fuller. So Jalen Johnson, who looked really good the first half of the year before getting hurt. Do we feel confident making him CB1? I don't know. I have my reservations about that, especially considering he is coming off the injury. And the first half of the year, it looked great, but is that a big enough sample size to know that's who he truly is? I don't know. And then after that, I like the draft pick of Thomas Graham, but, that was because he was a 6th-round pick, and I felt he was better than that. I don't know if he's ready to start right away. So definitely some question marks for this Bears team, but when you have Khalil Mack, when you have Akeem Hicks, you have, that reputation of being one of the best defenses. And you also have Roquan Smith. God forbid, how did I forget to talk about Roquan Smith? Maybe the best inside linebacker other than Bobby Wagner in the NFL right now. Maybe a guy who will supersede Bobby Wagner this upcoming season. There's obviously a lot of talent on the Chicago defense. I'm just concerned about the secondary, but they come in at number 11. Indianapolis Colts fans, here you go. I'm talking about you in a favorable light. I'm not talking about Carson Wentz. Now I am, but Indianapolis Colts top 10 defense. I don't think there's a whole lot to question there. Matt Eberflus deserves a ton of credit. This was a defense I did not expect to be as good as they were last year, and Eberflus is a big part of that. And that's why he was getting head coaching interviews and everything of the sort. Xavier Rhodes had his career go through a bit of a renaissance. Is that going to continue into a second year? We'll see. I like Rock Ya-Sin. I know he isn't exactly what he was, even for my expectations. I thought he'd be a lot better than where he is now, but I don't think he's a complete bum. Like, he's not trash, but he's not quite what he could have been. But I still think he's getting better. You got to think, he played at Presbyterian, played at the FCS level. You got to give him some time to make that jump. And he's gotten a lot of starting experience despite that, though. And then really like the safeties, right? Justin Blackman and Kari Willis. What a nice duo, but also young duo. Those guys are going to only get better. That's awesome. Darius Leonard, fantastic off-ball linebacker, will soon become the highest paid off-ball linebacker in football, and rightfully so. The dude has a nose for the football, knows how to make plays. He's great. DeForest Buckner, if it's not Chris Jones, Buckner might be the next best interior defensive lineman, or at least has the case to maybe be in that discussion. Obviously all behind Aaron Donald, but DeForest Buckner is fantastic, and you hope he has a big enough presence this year to help create opportunities for Kwity Paye and Deo Odenigbo, depending on when he gets back to the lineup, and overall just what's been a disappointing defensive end spot. I think there's still a possibility to bring back Justin Houston, or maybe they bring in Melvin Ingram. I think would be a good scheme fit in that 4-3. I think they could use a veteran there on the outside to get you an immediate, or get you guaranteed production out of that spot. Kwity Paye, obviously a great athlete, but we just don't know how quick that's going to translate and how polished he is for an NFL D end. So very similar to what I talked about with Odafe Oweh and the Baltimore Ravens. I like the talent. I like the upside. I just don't know how much you can bank on right away. But Kwity Paye aside, there's a lot of talent on this Colts defense and a great defensive coordinator putting it all together. So they come in the top 10. And then the New York Football Giants and James Bradberry, the man on your screen. What a signing. And that, I don't think anybody really saw that coming. Like, the Giants signed him. We all saw it was an upgrade, but that was largely because the Giants cornerback core at the time was just devoid of talent, to put it frank. And then Bradberry emerged as a legit #1. Like, he was fantastic last year. They signed Adoree Jackson, who is more of a flash player, and it's kind of similar to what the Pats have, right? Where, like, I see Bradberry as a #1, and right now, Stephon Gilmore is that for the Patriots. And then it allows J.C. Jackson to be a ball hawk playmaker, can take risks. And that's what Adoree Jackson can now be able to do. Additionally, they have Darnay Holmes. They draft Aaron Robinson, 2 great nickel options. And then the safeties, right? And also Julian Love. Shout out to Notre Dame. But also, what are you using Logan Ryan? How are you using Jabril Peppers? There's so much talent there. You also have one of the McCourty brothers there. There is so much to play around with, and it feels like Dave Gettleman was just like, hey, we're going to throw a bunch of resources in the secondary, and we're going to throw a bunch of resources on the outside. Dave Gettleman, this might be surprising. He might be a big PFF guy. He's trying to win on the perimeter. That's their MO. But he put a ton of resources there. But today we're talking about the defense. And then also, while I don't think it's a great edge group, I think Azeez Ojulari takes it from desolate to potentially really good. Obviously, he needs to stay on the field. He had the injury concern that made him fall midway through the second round, but that was great value. And if he is healthy, he was a first-round edge guy. He was the best 3-4 outside linebacker, in my opinion, out of this draft class. So he obviously a big-time help. And you bring back Leonard Williams, you re-sign him, I should say. He's great. I think Dexter Lawrence fills in nicely for Dalvin Tomlinson, who's now in Minnesota. Blake Martinez had a nice season last year. Do need some help in the linebacking core, and they need an outside linebacker opposite of Azeez Ojulari, and they need Ojulari to be really good. But we saw this Giants defense be better than we expected last year, and I think it continues this year as they come in at #9. And we're on to the top 8. Obviously, the team on the screen spoils who I have at #1, but we're going to get there. Cleveland Browns at #8. This was a team that already had some big names, right? Like Myles Garrett might be the best defensive end in football, right? Like, if you're talking about edge rusher for the future, him, Joey Bosa, the 2 highest paid, TJ Watt, soon to be in that category as well. Strictly edge here. Obviously, fantastic talent there. And Denzel Ward is a really solid cornerback. I think he's a superstar in the making. And then this offseason, they bring in Jadeveon Clowney, so you have a legit #2 edge guy. They also bring in Takk McKinley, a guy who can rotate in. They sign John Johnson III. Awesome. And that's already with a pretty good safety group in Ronnie Harrison Jr. or Ronnie Harrison Sr., I should say, and Grant Delpit. And I think Delpit here, now getting the opportunity to actually see the field, that he's going to be something to watch. So clearly a really good safety trio they have put together. And then you also bring in someone like Greg Newsome in the first round, who I know they want to believe in Greedy Williams, and I liked Greedy Williams coming out of LSU, but he just has not been able to stay healthy. And now you have a guy who, might just be a better football player, but also if Williams is hurt, Newsome gives you a legit #2 corner opposite of Denzel Ward, which goes a long way. So this team has done so much. Oh, also speaking of the draft, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, off-ball linebacker, one of their biggest needs going into the draft. They got him at a fantastic value. So they've addressed all the holes in their defense. I need to see it come together. I need to see it gel, but wow, the talent on that side of the football is impressive. And you know that team's going to put up points. And that defense, again, top 8 in my rankings. It's going to be a scary good team. Next up is the Miami Dolphins at #7. Their big need was edge, and they go out and they draft Jalen Phillips in the first round. So I think that gives them a legit #1 edge option. Still need to improve on the opposite side. Emmanuel Ogba, though, had a really nice year a season ago. Raekwon Davis now fills the Devon Godshaw role, and that's kind of what Miami has done well. They have drafted ahead so that when someone leaves, they have that next guy up. And I think Raekwon Davis is going to do a good job in that position. Additionally, they make the trade to go out and get Benardrick McKinney, pair him with Jerome Baker. Really like that inside linebacker duo. And then you got to talk about the secondary. I mean, if it's not Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey, it's got to be Byron Jones, and Xavier Howard is the best cornerback duo in football. I mean, it's unbelievable how good those two together are. And Byron Jones had some injuries, was on and off the field last year. If he's able to stay out there, again, it kind of goes back to what I've been talking about with the Patriots, and then again, just a moment ago, where Byron Jones can just be that guy and take away an option. He can be that shutdown guy, and then Xavier Howard can be a playmaker at the other cornerback spot. And I just love that duo. Tons of talent, 2 top 10 corners for sure in the NFL. And then also, I'm a huge Javon Holland fan. If you've been around the channel since my draft coverage, you know I was vying for Javon Holland, getting first round hype. That dude is unbelievable. He's a playmaker. He can play in the slot. He can play strong. He can play free. Just has a nose for the football, and his drive on the football was unmatched in this past draft class, in my opinion. And he paired up with Eric Rowe. Eric Rowe, not necessarily a flashy name, but a guy who gets the job done, and he's a solid football player. You should watch him. He does everything at a B to B plus level. Nothing that will stand out, catch your eye if you're not looking for him, but he gets the job done. He does what Brian Flores is looking for. And also, thinking of Brian Flores, you got to have confidence in defense, coached up by Brian Flores. So the Dolphins come in at number 7. The LA Rams at 6, last year's number 1 defense. I haven't fallen down to 6 a little bit. Some of that's the Brandon Staley effect. Some of it's John Johnson, Troy Hill departing to go to Cleveland. But overall, they have 2 of the top 5 defensive players in football. I think you can make the argument for. Aaron Donald, to me, is the best defensive player I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I mean, it's him and J.J. Watt, really. And I guess you could throw Darrelle Revis in that mix. But Aaron Donald is the best defensive player in football right now, regardless of how you slice it. And Jalen Ramsey, to me, is the best cornerback in football right now. So that's awesome. And they're winning at the 2 points where you need. You need pass rush and you need good corners. Boom. That's awesome. Darius Williams emerged as a really nice second corner. I think Taylor Rapp's a nice piece there in the safety position. I think that's why they ultimately let John Johnson III go, knowing they're tight on cap. So their confidence in Rapp, I think, speaks volumes to where I think he can be this upcoming season. Need to get better at the linebacking core, but when you have stars like Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, you're going to get the job done. Do think they overpaid Leonard Floyd, but he had 10 sacks last year. So if he's going to continue to produce with Aaron Donald, creating opportunities, giving them one-on-one matchups, then maybe the money's worth it. But I have the Rams at number 6. Coming in at number 5, the San Francisco 49ers. And obviously, this is like the biggest asterisk I'm leaning on in this video because I am doing this based off them being healthy. If Nick Bosa is out there, if Eric Armstead is out there, if especially D Ford, if he's out there, this pass rush could be just bonkers good. And that's what carried this team to the Super Bowl in 2019. Is they had a ridiculous pass rush, and Nick Bosa, for 3.5 quarters, was the best player on the field in that Super Bowl. And then, Mahomes does what he does, ultimately gets Kansas City, out in front and wins the Super Bowl. But maybe for, the first half, first 3 quarters, maybe, Nick Bosa was the most impressive player, best player on the field. And he has that game-breaking, type of ability in his, back pocket at all times. There's also Fred Warner, who is one of the best linebackers in football. Dre Greenlaw, nice young player as well. Kind of have some concerns there in the secondary, but Jimmy Ward, Jaquiski Tart, they get the job done. I really like Jaquiski Tart, one, because fantastic name, but I think he's got some upside and he's a good young athletic player. And then the corners, Mosley, pretty solid. Jason Verrett, when he's healthy, really solid player, obviously, when he's out on the field, and he just has a nose for creating plays and turnovers, so obviously he's a lot of fun to watch. But that secondary is solid with that healthy pass rush in front of him. Yeah, this is one of the best defenses in football, no doubt. My Pittsburgh Steelers come in at number 4, and maybe the Niners should be ahead of them, just because I do feel better about San Francisco's secondary compared to that of Pittsburgh. But Minka Fitzpatrick, top 3 safety in the NFL, in my opinion, and Terrell Edmonds, serves the role. He's a box safety. He's not, all that great, but he's okay, and it definitely helps having Minka next to him. Joe Hayden still plays at a, moderately high level, solid outside corner. Ultimately, as of right now, I would bet Cam Sutton ends up playing on the outside, and maybe they sign a guy like Brian Poole, who is a really, really good nickel player, and I think Sutton can play on the outside. He's a little small, but outside of that, he has the skill set in my eyes to play on the outside. And then if you sign Brian Poole, that alleviates some of my stress. But as it stands right now, maybe it's Justin Lane on the outside with Sutton and a nickel, or it's Sutton on the outside and you're relying on undrafted player Shakar Brown from Michigan State in the nickel. I don't know. That guy was a playmaker, but went undrafted for reasons. So obviously the cornerback position is really weak, but then you look at the front 7 and healthy Devin Bush, one of the best young athletic. He fits what you want in today's middle linebacker, right? I am a big fan of Alex Highsmith. I saw it, small sample size, but you see the flashes for why Pittsburgh was comfortable moving on from Bud Dupree, and Alex Highsmith stood out when given the chance. And obviously TJ Watt, in my opinion, best young edge in football right now. A little biased there. Also shares a first name of my own. So That's my guy. But TJ Watt, no matter how you slice it, one of the best edge rushers in football right now and only getting better. I don't think anybody thought he'd be this good in general, but like this good this early in his career. Hasn't even gotten to his second contract. Steelers and him are negotiating that now. But this guy's a freak, and he will make it easier for Alex Highsmith on the outside. And then Cam Hayward has just kind of gotten, I've heard the comp to Calais Campbell, honestly, and I think it's a good one, where he turned 30 and then all of a sudden just become elite. Like they were good before, and then they turned 30 years old and become one of the best players on the interior in football. And that's, speaks to the volumes for Cam Hayward. He's one of the best doing it right now. And Stephon Tuitt, when he's not injured, one of the best interior pass rushers in all of football. They bring back Tyson Alualu, really good nose tackle, looked great in the defense last year. So overall, the front seven, I think, has a lot to like for Pittsburgh. Maybe a little thin at middle linebacker, but Robert Spillane had moments. And if he's your second inside linebacker, you can work with that. But the big concerns come on the outside. So maybe you flip San Francisco and Pittsburgh, but overall, I think they're both pretty close. And then the top three kind of differentiate themselves, in my opinion. I think there's a healthy step up to the Denver Broncos where I kind of struggle to find a weakness. Bradley Chubb and Von Miller have not played a full season together since 2018, right? 2019, you have Bradley Chubb get hurt. They play 4 games together that season, and then Von Miller missed all of last year. So it's been a while since I've seen those two play together. And Chubb's only gotten better. Von Miller's still one of the best doing it when he is, healthy and at 100%. Those two, that's a great pass rush duo. That's going to create a lot of plays. You bring back Shelby Harris too on the interior. Love that. They're a little weak on the inside linebacker position. That's the weakness. But then you look at the safeties, maybe the best safety duo in football, Justin Simmons, who might be the best safety in football. Kareem Jackson, I loved the move from him to move from corner to safety. It really has added so many years to his career. And on the outside, you make your pick. I think Kyle Fuller is definitely starting. You paid a lot of money to Ronald Darby, so you figure he's going to see the field. But if it's not him, then it's the 9th overall pick in Patrick Surtain, who has the making of a guy who can make a big impact right away. Bryce Callahan's one of the best nickel corners in football. Michael Ojemudia was a really nice 3rd-round pick last year, played better than I think a lot of people expected. There's just a lot of talent in that secondary, safeties and corners combined. I like the idea of Chubb and Miller. Obviously, I like the idea of those two working together on the outside, Harris in the middle. This is just a really nearly complete defense. They're just a couple inside linebackers away, and also Vic Fangio. That's fantastic. That guy knows how to coach a defense. So I have the Broncos coming in at number 3. At number 2, Tampa Bay. Another one of those teams where you got to start looking real hard for a hole in that defense. Like the safeties, Antoine Winfield is the playmaker to go along with, Edwards and Whitehead. But overall, that trio rotates really well. Love that group of players. And Carlton Davis has emerged as, a top 15 corner, really solid player. Jamel Dean's a really athletic corner who's only getting better. You also have Sean Murphy-Bunting. He can play in the nickel. Really like him as a player. He's a really fun one for me to watch. I love watching corners, and I don't know, I just have an affinity for Sean Murphy-Bunting for whatever reason. And then Devin White, Levante David, the best inside linebacker duo in football. JPP still playing at a high level. Shaq Barrett, this late bloomer that the Bucs hit on, and he's been one of the best edge players in football. Then you get to the interior. Vita Vea is one of the best nose tackles in football, stuffs the run, getting better as a pass rusher. You have Ndamukong Suh coming back. Again, find a hole. You're reaching. And then they draft Joe Tryon, so they have a rotational edge piece to add to the mix. This is as good a defense as it gets. And a lot of credit goes to defensive coordinator Todd Bowles. He's one of the best defensive minds in football. So the Bucs are at 2, and it was hard not to put them at 1, but dude, the Washington football team, again, find a hole. I'm telling you, that front 4 is the best in football, with Montez Sweat opposite of Chase Young, and on the interior of Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen. You're not finding anything better than that. And they also have Matt Ioannidis, just rotating in, a guy who would start for a handful of teams. I'm sure Green Bay would love to have Matt Ioannidis next to Kenny Clark as a pass rushing D tackle. And then I know the linebackers aren't great. Cole Holcomb is a guy who's a good athlete and has had splashes. I think there's people who like his game, including myself, but overall it just hasn't been there yet. I think Jamin Davis is a sleeper for defensive rookie of the year. I think he's a stud. One, the fact that he was the number 1 defensive player on the board for someone like Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio, 2 former NFL linebackers who know the position like the back of their hand, that speaks volumes. So I don't know what it takes to be a linebacker in the NFL, but they do. And if they see him in that high of light, they know more than I do. I'll trust their opinion. So, but what I did see on tape, Jamie Davis got better week by week at Kentucky, and he's still young, and he has a small sample size of playing time underneath his belt. So he's somebody who I could definitely see struggle early on like Patrick Queen did, but actually show improvement. And by the end of the year, especially if Washington's in the playoff hunt or in the playoffs themselves, Jamie Davis could come away as a big-time playmaker, but he's going to stuff the run. He's a fantastic athlete, so he's going to help in coverage. Him and Holcomb and the nickel linebackers really like their coverage ability. Then you talk about the secondary. You signed William Jackson III. He's probably going to get the number one assignment. Kendall Fuller last year was getting number one assignments, looked really good, and he can also play in the slot. I think as of right now, Jimmy Moreland is slated to be the nickel corner. They also draft Benjamin St-Juste, who I think is a really nice rotational outside cornerback. So love that group. And then if they keep Landon Collins, he's a really interesting strong safety. Who can play near the line of scrimmage, fits that Ron Rivera defense really well. And then Cameron Curl was a fantastic surprise last year for Washington, and I love those two together. I think their skill sets bounce off each other really, really well. So for all those reasons, I have the Washington football team as my number one defense heading into the 2021 NFL season. But let me hear your defensive rankings down in the comments section. Who's your favorite team? Where would you put them? And which one of my takes do you think I'm the most wrong on? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I respond to every comment, so let's have that discussion down below. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. Please hit that like button if you did. If you're new to the channel, want more sports content in your life, please consider subscribing. Also, if you have any video ideas, let me hear it down below. That's all I got for this one. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.